Ron here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Shadowdark role-playing game. The Shadowdark role-playing game was designed by Kelsey Dion of the Arcane Library. Kelsey has done many 5th edition D&D adventures and accumulated a large following doing that. Kelsey has some roots in old school style gaming as she learned from James Mishler, who sat at Gary Gygax's table. Now, looking at this game overall, it was very clear that she wanted to blend, BX OSR style gaming with modern sensibilities. And I think she did a really good job at doing that. First of all, the art is gorgeous. Look at the cover art here of the 10-eyed oracle or what have you. It's absolutely beautiful. One of the neat things is that I have the PDF, but this is laid out basically like the hardcover book's going to be. And in the inside cover, you're going to have some useful tables and notes. And so that's always a good thing. We have that. The game is like a 330-page book. It's split into the character and gameplay section and the game master section. This is a old school D20 based game. So, you roll a D20, you add a modifier, you compare it to the DC, and you determine success or failure. One of the things that she does with this is when you start to get to the character section, you start to see something like, first of all, there's alignment in this game, but there's only the 3 alignments of law, chaos, and neutrality. You still have the 6 stats, and you have the hit points. One of the things with this is that XP is different. You earn XP by gaining treasure, but it's a more abstracted system. So you can either start as a 0-level characters and go through a gauntlet like many games have these days, like Dungeon Crawl Classics. And there's some inspiration in Dungeon Crawl Classics for sure. Or you start as first-level characters. The stat modifier chart is just like modern D&D. When I say modern D&D, I'm talking about 3rd edition onwards, where, you start with as low as a -4 and go up to a +4 for 18 plus. You have 6 different ancestries: dwarf, elf, half-orc, halfling, human, and goblin. The thing is that, unlike in other modern games, these ancestries have very simple rules, very short descriptions. And then you get into the classes. There are only 4 classes in the base book. You have the fighter, the priest, the thief, and the wizard. Each of these classes, they have a short description on what they're supposed to do, tells you what kind of weapons and armor, and the hit points, and then some special abilities. And one thing about each of the classes is that at every odd level, you gain a talent. And with the talent, you don't get to choose. You actually roll 2d6 and refer to a chart. Now, that might not be to some people's taste. I can definitely see that. But what it does is it enforces a level of creativity, right? So that you're not sitting there min-maxing character, but you get what you get. For example, the fighter, if you roll a 2 on 2d6, you gain weapon mastery with 1 additional weapon. And if you roll 7 to 9, you get a +2 to strength, dexterity, and constitution. Or if you roll a 12, you get to choose a talent or put +2 points to distribute to your stats. Other powers that the fighter has is Holler. You add your constitution modifier to your gear slots if your con mod is positive. We'll talk about equipment later on here. You have weapon mastery, which gives you a +1 to attack and damage with that weapon type. And then you add half your level to those rolls, round down. So what happens is, just want to talk about the character progression. Every odd level, you're getting a talent. Every even level, you typically have a power that's going up by 1. So fighters get a talent at level 1, but their weapon mastery goes up by 1 at level 2, and so on and so forth. And then finally, they have grit, which you choose strength and dexterity. You have advantage on checks of that type to overcome opposing force, such as kicking, open a stuck door. With the priest, they have a talent chart. They have Turn Undead as a default power, which is actually a spell in the book. But the priest class gets to know the Turn Undead spell automatically. And so they have to choose a deity, and the deity has some narrative elements to it that's basically up to the GM. You can also determine what spells the priests have available to them depending on the deity that you chose. And of course, their main power is spell casting. They start with knowing 2 tier 1 spells of your choice, which, by the way, instead of spell levels, they're spell tiers. It's the same thing. But thankfully, she changed the name because it always got annoying. We had class level, dungeon level, and spell level. There are 5 levels of spells, by the way. But the levels of spells have differing levels of power. I'll talk about some of those later on. I know I keep saying that, but I promise I'm going to pay it off. The thief has backstab as a major power. You deal an extra weapon die of damage, and that goes up 1 die equal to half your level, round down. And once again, you're getting a talent at level 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and you're getting an extra backstab die at 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And then another major power they have is thievery. The way that this game handles skills is that you just have an ability check. You're just rolling a d20 and adding your stat bonus. Instead of having, well, if I'm proficient in a skill, I get a proficiency bonus or what have you. You just get advantage. So with thievery, you get advantage to climbing, sneaking, hiding, applying disguises, and just things like that. Now, the Wizards class, their major thing, of course, is spell casting. Did I mention that this was an old school style game? Because Wizards and Thieves get D4 hit points. So it's dangerous to be a thief and a wizard. But of course, Wizards, they get their spells. The spells get more powerful as they go up in level. And since this game only has 10 levels, when you're getting up to 5th level spells, they're more powerful than 5th level spells are in other modern D&D games, by the way. So that's it for the classes. Then you have your background. You roll on a d20 chart you choose, and you have a background. The neat thing with the background, you can work with the GM to determine if it gives you advantages in a given situation. And that's something, as a GM, I like to be pretty liberal with, because the way that I look at it is the background is your skill system. Like 13th Age, which is a game I'm very fond of, they, instead of having skills, they have backgrounds. And they're backgrounds that you name, and you put a certain amount of points in those backgrounds, and if a role that's relevant to the background, you get to add that bonus. Well, this doesn't do that, but the way that I treat it is if your background is relevant to the role that you're trying to make, you get to make it at advantage. But that's not in the book, but that's what I do. Then there's some discussion about alignment and deities, and Kelsey gave each of the classes titles based on their alignment, and this is something that I have nostalgia for, having started D&D in 87 back when the classes had titles for each level, but she breaks these down by alignment as well. Some of these I really like, some of them I don't, but that's just a matter of taste. Then with gear, I mentioned gear slots earlier. The equipment works as a slot system. For the most part, a piece of equipment takes up a slot. You are guaranteed to have at least 10 slots. Of course, fighters also happen to add their constitution bonus to slots as well. So you can end up from anywhere between 10 and 18 slots. I think you can end up with 20 slots. There might be circumstances where you might end up with 20 slots. But anyway, slots for the most part are precious. And one thing I want to point out, I'll get to this, is that small items don't take up a slot. So there's that. And then some items take up multiple slots, like chainmail, which is medium armor, takes up 2 slots, and plate mail takes up 3 slots. A torch, by the way, takes up 1 slot. And the reason why that is that torches are very important because no characters have dark vision. Torches burn for an hour in real time, and what that does is it forces, I know it's a meta thing, but it forces players to think more critically and maybe perhaps focus more, because once the torch goes out, they're completely and totally in the dark. And it's a great rule that reads pretty well. It's exciting on paper, and I've watched actual plays of it, but I actually haven't had a chance to run it myself, so I'm not sure how it would actually run out in play for me, but we'll see. One of the things I love about this game is bunches of charts, like charts for character name, charts to roll up random characters, charts for all types of things. They show some here in the character creation in level advancement chapters. And then the book goes on to magic. So with magic, you have to roll to cast a spell, and the difficulty is 10 plus the tier of the spell, and you're adding your casting modifier. Wizard, you're adding intelligence. Priest, you're adding wisdom. If you fail the spellcasting check, you can no longer cast a spell for the rest of the day until you rest. If you roll a natural 1, for wizards, you roll on a mishap table depending on the tier. And for a cleric, you have to do penance. You have to make a sacrifice of a certain gold piece amount. And once again, that's based on the tier of the spell. Then there's some rules on scrolls and wands. And then there's a list of spells. And by the way, remember when I said that tier 5 spells are more powerful than they are more modern D&D? Well, for example, Wish is a tier 5 spell in this game. Power Word Kill is a tier 5 spell in this game. That's not normally the case in like 3rd edition and 5th edition D&D. There's a chapter on how the game plays, but I'm not going to go over that. I mentioned advantage and disadvantage. You also have luck tokens. Luck tokens let you reroll, but you have to take the second result. There's some rules for overland travel and downtime. One of the neat things about this game I found is with downtime, the carousing rules. You can spend your hard-earned cash to go on a night on the town and carouse and get into all sorts of trouble, but you can gain XP from that as well. Very Conan-esque, and I absolutely love that. Seeing as I'm running a fantasy pulp sword and sorcery type game, I'm really looking forward to using these rules in the game. After the carousing rules, we have Wizards and Thieves, which is a game that she made up as an example of playing the book, and that's it for the players section.